The latest hotfix for TFD has dropped, and while we had a decent idea it would be good, we had no idea just how great it could be. Components are raining down everywhere, some sets even got nice new changes and increased viability, lesser used modules got some big changes in many cases, and elemental gun damage now benefits from weak point multipliers. Yeah, there's a lot going on. So in this video we'll have a look at the patch notes, dissect the good and the bad, and give you all the info that you need to know for when you boot into the game. Now kicking things off, we have the component drops increasing massively across the board. Starting with the Colossus drops, we now get 8 pieces for their set, dropping after a kill, up from 2. Now meaning set farms are going to be much easier going forward. Finally, I can try for my perfected Slayer set and Pyromaniac won't know what hit him. On top of that, Hunter set pieces from the Void Vessel end boss will now drop 8 pieces up from a measly 1, so if you've been after that 4 set of your dreams, well now's the time to be able to go get it. If all this wasn't enough though, 400% infill missions now also drop 4 pieces of component sets that are specific to that level. Now I'll pop the table up on the screen for you now, but with levels of Unknown Lab and Slumber Valley currently active, you can farm yourself some Annihilation and Supernova pieces nice and easy. If those aren't what you're after, expect tomorrow to bring another set to be able to farm with it. Now lastly, rounding off the content improvements, we get another nerf to Void Purge runs, but specific to levels 28 and 29, with abominations either spawning less or just not at all in some cases, and good riddance. Now weapons and modules wise though, we get some huge changes here. A bug fix for the restored relics cluster rounds blocking sights, sure, but the big news for the weapon users here is in line of the improved firearms attribute attack to increase in line with weak point modifiers. I'm not exaggerating, this is a huge increase with damage potential now, as we were already building elements for purge runs in the first place and now it makes it more lethal. Last Dagger alone in the lab was hitting for 7 million points of damage more from my previous testing, and while I did have a few more bullets in the mag than before on my previous test, that's mostly coming from the weak point changes. Nutty doesn't even begin to cover how strong this is and what it will mean for weapon builds going forward. Modules wise, we get some big changes for both Descendant and weapons, but let's kick it off with the Descendant side first. Lethal Infection got its bonus doubled to 5% per stack, so it's a little bit middling and there's usually better options, but Hyper Focus, wow, I need to have a think how to get the most out of this mod, as while the buff to gun crits has gone from 10 to 15 seconds, the other half of landing a firearm crit first, and now grants 46% increased skill crit damage for 15 seconds. Builds that can easily hit close to or like 100% skill crit rate like Sharon, Haley, Viessa, they will love this DPS boost that this can provide. You pair this with a Secret Garden or Last Dagger and you'll easily hit this bonus all the time. I'll be testing this out one for several builds, let's see what we can do. I'm trying to see if Zenith is going to be proccing this off, that's just come to mind while I've been going off script, but there's a few things that I'm really interested in to be able to get the most out of this. Last Stand had its cap increased from 17 to 42.5% based on the shield absorb, and now you get 60 seconds of 1.5% shield recovery, which still is enough to be able to get yourself back to 100, but maybe 1 or 2 players will be happy by that. Continuous Exaltation is still irrelevant and will probably stay that way until we see some more sub-attack changes. Technique Manual is positively bonkers in regards to the buff that it got, offering 460% of your HP total as extra damage up from 46. I've messed about with this a small bit with my Gumber Stomping Ajax and it's feeling a bit more useful, but we'll see what else can be achieved with this mod in time. Preemptive Strike had its damage doubled from 8.5% to 17%, so I'll be doing some ISOMO testing in time to see how this feels. Mid-air fire no longer decimates your defense, giving a small buff accuracy, but an increase of 64.2% to your defense, so that's definitely a welcome change. Not sure who uses this, but hey, it's a buff overall. The Plunder mod's got a change from 34% of restoring HP and MP to 100% chance, like it should have been when the game first dropped, but still, until we see the melee changes come through like they've mentioned, this still won't be used. And then lastly, Veterans Tactics, the most cope mod out there of hoping that it will proc, but never does, got a nice buff from 2.1% chance to 19.4%, albeit though with a 5-second cooldown. Now honestly I like this change on paper, so I'm looking forward to seeing who can get this most out of this and who its best suit is for. The first ones off the top of my head, I'm thinking Keelan is definitely going to be up there. Blair definitely could be there in terms of like his massive fireball and things like that, but I suppose over time we'll see how they fare. Firearm wise, it's buffs across the board, but nothing really is exciting. Hardline mods for impact and special guns had their knockdown chances increased. Interestingly though, with the impact one, no cooldown seems to be mentioned on the patch notes, so I guess we'll see how that one works out. Heat Incinerator, Quick Freezer, Venom Injector, no, not that Venom Injector, and Remote Generator all got the same change, with the status applying to enemies within 15 meters instead of 8, and had their mod group removed, allowing you to be able to combine this with other yellow mods. Now this buff sounds nice, but I think the main thing to hold this back is that cooldown of 20 seconds on a 5-second duration mod, but I guess a buff's a buff still, so I can't really complain. Frigid Burn had its condition become easier to meet with the reduction from 25 meters down to 20. Better weapon weight is now part of the battle proficiency group and has a 100% uptime if you manage to change your weapons often enough. And then lastly, Brisk Walk is probably the best of the bunch, having its mod group removed and boosting speed by 24% for 10 seconds. This might work well with a few skill descendants too, so expect everyone to be zooming about the levels now. Component set-wise, 6 of them got changes ranging from tweaks to just flat-out reworks. So starting with the easier of the bunch, we have the Bravery set having a nerf to its 2-piece, losing 0.1% of its max shield and the HP recovery altogether, and the 4-piece losing the skill duration, but instead gaining a skill cost reduction and an easier condition for getting the skill cooldown that the set is known for. Now this should open it up to a few more Descendants rather than just Ajax, and might be in contention for skill sets that can't rely on Slayer for the damage and the cost. Now Volcano set got a nice buff to its 4-piece with changes to the weapon attacks for handguns, cannons and shotguns, but the star of the show will be that reload boost giving up to 12.9% skill power, paired with the 2-piece already giving the fire skill power as well. Will this be the go-to for Serena? It's definitely looking a possibility, but I suppose we'll see as to who else can really kind of get the most out of it. Now Invader set got a weird change as technically the 2-piece feels a bit of a nerf, losing max shield for skill range. I like to use it as a 2-piece on Enzo for more survival, but now that's going to have to change. Its 4-piece also changed, going up to a 13.5% max duration increase from 10.5, as well as lasting 3 times longer at 30 seconds. It's got a bit of a give or take, but overall doesn't really destroy what the Invader set was being used for. The Frozen Heart now belongs in a strange place, changing its 4-piece ability altogether. The 2-piece now gives non-attribute skill power, so a welcome change from the piddly 5% crit rate increase on certain weapons, but the 4-piece now grants 1 stack of Frozen Heart energy when gaining custom resource. Each of these grants max shield of 6.2%, but when casting a skill at max stacks, enemies that are hit will now have a Frozen Heart Essence debuff, increasing the amount of damage they will receive by 3% for 10 seconds. Now, is this better than what it was before? I'm honestly not too sure. The max shield is decent. I can see it being used and cool for some kind of like Ajax players, but the debuff it applies is a bit bizarre and seems a little bit on the low side. We'll see how it fares against some of the tougher enemies, I suppose. Luna, on the other hand, gets a buff with the Hungry Sonic changes, with a 2-piece now being a very useful benefit of giving 12% to your MP heal modifier, and the 4-piece turning from a wall of text into gaining 1 stack of Efflux on skill cast, and with gain 5 at max, and each will then increase your max MP by 0.6%, so a total of 3% max MP. And when buffing players, you'll also then recover allies' HP by 10.9%. Some of these are decent changes, leaning into Luna into more of a support than she knows what to do with. And then lastly, we get Ultimate Freyna's main set, which is going to be the Distorted Resolve, just getting a change to its 4-piece, boosting skill power by up to 14.3% as you get close to 1 HP, and a huge change to shield recovery when applying debuffs, as now it's a 100% chance to gain 15% on a 15-second cooldown, rather than just the 5% chance that it originally had. And then to top it all off, the Exaltation attack will now fire guided projectiles at the nearest enemy, and isn't specific to the Colossus anymore. This now deals less damage, but still it's a very welcome change. So a lot of changes. It's still early days to whether these new set changes will be able to topple Slayer from the top spot, but there's a couple that do seem viable enough for now. As for the rest of the patch, we get a couple of notable things, but we can breeze through a bunch as we go. The shop now displaying paint first inside of the common cosmetic items attachments is a thing, but if you're like me, you just kind of buy these inside the customization menus anyway, so you won't really notice this. Glaymaids and content creators everywhere will now rejoice as we can turn off explosive effects for all players, including ourselves. So no more will I be putting up content of mushroom clouds, and if you are subbed for just the explosion clouds, I'm sorry, but I'll understand if you do look elsewhere for that kind of content. We can now also hide other players' titles, our damage numbers as we play, handguns on our back, and fellow names if that's your thing. Lastly, we can wrap it up with the bug fixes. Commanders on Purge levels 21, 24 and 27 won't spawn anymore until you cleared out the full wave. Keelan, Ult Freyna and Ult Sharon will now give you the right amount of gold should you dismiss them. Haley's cryo effect will stop being visible after duration and certain conditions. Last Dagger had its strike reload shot text change, making it easier to understand. No effect to the damage that we're aware of, so that's good news. Step seems to have possibly been buffed already with a 30-second speed increase instead of the previous 20. Ancient Fire won't apply on the cluster rounds of the relic anymore, and the cooldown of the continuous exaltation will now properly apply. They've fixed an issue with results screens restarts on field missions, another issue with the number of paint items not being displayed when purchasing bundles, as well as an issue with the setting of show only my fellow, then causing all fellows to not be displayed. In the current running event of Kate's Assistant, rewards have been amended from the 30% completions, taking away the spawn effect and replacing it with 10 paint and an emote. It's also been confirmed that those that claimed the spawn effect in time will have it removed and be replaced with paints and emotes, so I'm not too sure what's actually going to happen with that, whether they're going to put it in into like store or if they're going to put it into a different event, but if that's gone and you're wondering, then that's going to be the reason why. They fixed issues with dyeing Inez's Oasis body skin for the Hot Springs collection, adjusted the brightness of the Inez's default skin too, fixed an issue with Luna's eyes of all things when using enhanced skills and equipped with the Noise Surge module, fixed Felby's bang in the party head skin, adjusted the fellow to collect other items if consumables are at capacity, fixed the fellow's auto dismantle failing, and lastly fixed the tooltip for the distorted resolve to now display that cooldown of its shield recovery change that's happened earlier in this patch. And with all that out of the way, that wraps it up on the video for the latest hotfix and content for the game. A lot of changes, a few middling and a couple just meh, but overall I do like these changes. Some modules might get thrown in for consideration now with the buffs to Hyper Focus, Technique Manual and Veterans Tactics all having sizable changes, but that change to elemental weapon damage is absolutely huge. Weapons really are about to take front and centre. But this is a section I want to hear from you. How are you ready for Season 2 Part 2? Will you be changing a few builds for those module changes? And lastly, why did I just pay 750 credits just to have a backwards baseball cap for all of my male descendants? Let me know all that and more down below. Massive thank you for making your way to the end of the video. As I always say, keep yourself safe, keep yourselves well, and I'll see you all on the next video.